The 80-20 rule. How many of you guys are familiar with the 80-20 rule? I think everybody's heard of Pareto's principle, that 20% of your time or your inputs will be responsible for 80% of the results in your business. So, one of the things that I've started to do is to really kind of study this, because for many of us, put up your hand if time is not an issue for you. Not a single person, right? And the only thing in life is that is finite is time. We're only here for a certain amount of time. And it was interesting because I was having a conversation with my wife's cousin, Asma. She was here the last few days. And this was like 7-8 years ago. And you guys remember when you guys were 7-8 years old and summers dragged on? Like, you're like, oh man, I can't wait till I'm a teenager. Life is going too slow. But when you get into your 30s or your 40s, and it's like, oh my gosh, time is just going like that, right? I mean, if I look at the last decade, honestly, it's just like, it's like a blink of an eye. It really is a blink of an eye. And she said something that really kind of made a lot of sense to me, is that, when you look at time, it's all relative to yourself. So for example, when you're 4 years old and you're going to be 5 years old, that's 25% of your life, going from 4 to 5. But from 40 to 41 is 2.5%. Do you see what I'm saying? Why you think, oh my gosh, life is just going like that, it's just going like that. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to do now that I'm in my 40s is, how do I leverage my time best to get the results that I want to get as fast as I can, and that way be able to achieve things a lot faster than I normally would have been doing if I'm not focusing on the things that are going to push the dial. Then why am I doing it? David, could you do me a favor? Could you just bring up my large laptop that's sitting over there on that table? So what I started doing is I started studying Pareto's principle. For those of you who don't know, it's basically a principle that was suggested by a management thinker, Joseph Juran. It was named after the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, who observed that 80% of the income in Italy was received by 20% of the Italian population. The assumption is that most of the results in any situation are determined by a small number of causes. So when he first came out with this principle, nobody gave a crap. Nobody really paid attention to it until after really World War II, where a couple of other economists really kind of started looking at it and saying, well, hey, listen, this thing kind of has wings. It kind of makes sense. And what ended up happening was, after World War II, we all know what happened in Japan, that in the 60s and 70s, they started applying the 80-20 rule to their economy and to manufacturing. So what happened in the 80s, folks? This is a nation that was basically almost wiped out in World War II. And in the 80s, they became the powerhouse when it came to electronics and high quality products coming out of Japan. And that's when finally the US took notice and said, okay, well, what's going on? And they started applying the 80-20 rule. Basically 20% of your inputs are responsible for 80% of your outputs. So, just give me a second here. How many of you guys are currently are cognitive of the 80-20 rule in your business and apply that every single day? Not every single day, but maybe one guy in the whole entire room. So then this is going to be something that you guys definitely want to pay attention to. So let's talk about the Pareto principle, and and maybe this is just kind of a natural phenomenon that they were talking about when they were doing this type of research, but they found in almost every kind of situation that this rule just naturally applied. mean, one of the things is 80% of inputs for an engine are wasted, and only actually 20% is actually used to power an engine, which opened up the opportunity of what can they do to improve the quality of an engine. It just, every test that they did, they found that 20% of the input was responsible for 80% of the output. 80% of your sales will come from 20% of your customers. How true is that? How true is that? That 80% of your sales will come from 20% of your customers. 80% of your productivity will come from 80% of your productivity will come from 20% of your employees. How many of you who have multiple employees notice that your business is being driven by just a few employees, that if you lost them, my God, things would go pretty haywire. Whereas there's other employees that, yeah, they're just getting by, but they're not really responsible for the outcome of your business. "80% of the people in this room will not act on the information taught during this live event." So if you're sitting at a table of 5, look at the other 4 and say, "So sad, so sad. What's wrong with you?" And that's just the reality. In fact, in internet marketing, when it comes to internet marketing courses, 95% of people do not finish the training or act upon the information taught in any sort of training, okay? Now, the 80-20 rule might not be exact. In some cases, it's 85-15. In some cases, 75-25. But generally, the rule is 80-20. So when you're starting your internet business and you've tasted success, how many people in this room didn't feel like they had to struggle or didn't feel overwhelmed at any point in their journey? Exactly. When you're growing a business, in most cases, it turns into a job. And one of the things that came along that really had a profound effect on the thinking of a lot of internet marketers, because typically you think differently in corporate world than you do when you're trying to start your business from your basement, right? You guys are aware of Rich Schefren? Yeah. So one of the things that I definitely do is I read what is called his Internet Business Manifesto at least once a year. Because when you're growing your business, this is exactly what happens to you. You become your legal compliance, your customer service, your content manager, your finance, your marketing. You're buying your traffic. You're doing basically all of these things. And you end up saying to yourself, what are you doing? Who has been able to successfully pull this off? Not a single person, right? And I read his Internet Business Manifesto, and I actually put a link right here to where you can download it. And I highly recommend that you do download it, because it helps me reboot and talk about, why am I doing the accounting? I know I'm an accountant, but let it go. Why are you wasting your time on that? Because is that a 20% input that's going to drive 80% of my results? No, absolutely not. It's a complete waste of time. Yeah, you know what? You think to yourself, put up your hand here and let's be honest here with your internet marketing business. How many of you guys are frugal? Come on, let's be honest. You saw that $17 piece of software and you said, I'm not paying $17 for that. Am I the only one that's frugal? This is embarrassing, folks. Okay, here we go. Now we got some honesty going here, right? And for the longest time, I did all my books. I said, I'm an accountant. I'm going to do all my books. And I found that doing all of my books took out 4 days of my year. 4 days of my year. And it was not a driver in my business at all. So I said to myself, why am I doing it? Just pay somebody. Cost me maybe about $2,000 to $3,000 a year to do my book, because the 4 days that I would save, I could probably generate more than $3,000 in additional sales. And one of the exercises that I'm sure that all of you have gone through is determining how much of your time in hours, how much are you worth? And when I did that type of exercise, I pretty much soon realized that I was worth my time. And a lot of people ask me, do you do coaching? Do you do personal coaching and mentoring? And I don't do personal coaching or mentoring, because I value my time at $1,000 an hour. When I did all of the equations of all the earnings and how much time I put into my business, it came to $1,000 an hour. And that's how I base all of my decisions now. And that's how you got to think. So this took some time for my wife to get used to. That every decision is based on that I'm valuing my time at $1,000 per hour. You have to do this, okay? So when she's booking a flight for me for an event, like for example, this Monday night, I'm gonna be flying out to Nashville because Ed is having his annual event on Tuesday, Wednesday. She'll look and she'll say, well, the flight to Nashville is $423, but you're gonna stop in Washington, and then from Washington, you'll go to Nashville, whereas the direct flight from Toronto to Nashville is $750. Oh my gosh, I just saved you $300. I go, how long is the layover? She goes, about 2 hours. I go, no, you just cost me $2,000. No, but honestly, because you think to yourself, oh, I'm gonna sit back, I'm gonna lay over, I'm gonna sit in the cafe at the airport, I'm gonna get so much. That never happens. Next thing you know, you're just popping chocolate bars and you're just waiting for your flight, right? Not only are you destroying your health, but now you've lost $1,000 per hour, right? So I try to measure that in terms of, the way I try to, position my day. And even then, if you look at guys like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, why do you think Steve Jobs only wore jeans and black turtlenecks? Do you guys know why he only wore black turtleneck and jeans? He didn't want to take the time to make a decision of what he was going to wear that day. Did not want to make that decision. So, my wife will say to me, if we're going to a wedding or we're going to a function, she'll say, what do you want to wear? I go, why are you asking me that? Just pick something and iron it and I'll put it on or whatever. Or she'll even ask me, what do you want to eat? And I'll say to her, I don't want to waste my brain thinking, no, honestly, how, I know I'm a joker, but I'm not trying to joke here now. I'm trying to say to you guys here, and it's frustrating for her because she doesn't understand that. Like she'll ask me questions about, and David and Carol are realizing this. They'll ask me questions in the office and I go, I don't want to think about this. Did you guys know that there is an entire filter around the US president? That they only give the US president certain amounts of information during the day, because if they gave him all the information of everything that was going on from Burma to China to South Africa, he'd probably have a nervous breakdown. So they're very selective of the information that they feed the US president. So I explained this to my wife, that I'm very selective. You got to be selective of the information that you share with me, so I don't get mentally exhausted and I'm not, on par in my business. And she looked at me, and I thought she was going to say, that makes absolute sense. And she said to me, you're not the US president. Get out of your office and get at the dinner table. Because at some point, it got pretty bad. I used to get so engrossed into useless activities online that my whole life revolved around the computer, right? Like one time when we were in the apartment, she was cleaning up and she was getting rid of clutter. So she'd be thinking, I'm going to throw this out, I'm going to throw this out, right? And I'm on my computer, right? I don't want to even think about this, right? And she goes, well, do you want to throw this out? And I'm looking at it, I go, yeah, just delete it. Not even thinking about what I was talking about. What do you mean delete it? I go, just throw it out, right? And she stopped, I think she got a little bit frustrated. She stopped emailing me to come for dinner. So she now bangs on the door, she sends one of the kids, right? But what I'm trying to get across here is that, time is finite, so you want to be able to use your time the most efficiently, and by assigning a certain dollar value to what your hour is worth, that helps you make better. Like, I'm being honest with you, I have not done things like grocery shopping ever since I've been married. And my wife doesn't mind, she does all of that stuff. I will cut the grass once in a while because I need the exercise, but now I've got my kids doing all of that kind of stuff so that I can focus on my business or focus on actually going to the gym and doing something there, right? As opposed to, doing activities that I know I'd rather pay somebody $15 an hour to mow the lawn than spend $1,000 of my time mowing the actual lawn. Sean, my man, come to the mic.
This recording to be available, because I have to show my wife that someone else.
Yeah. Okay. Sean was just saying, are the recordings going to be made available so he can sit down and show my wife, right? So yes, they will be made available. You could show it to your wife. It's funny that you say that, Sean, because how many of you guys follow Eben Pagan? Okay, so Eben Pagan he's kind of like, I guess you could say, very strategic thinking in terms of marketing. And he says that when you're working and every time there is a disruption, that throws you off actually 20 minutes to get back into that mindset and get back into that, right? And once again, I shared this with my wife. I go, listen, Eben Pagan says that every time you're coming into the office telling me to change his diaper, you're throwing me off not only 5 minutes to change his diaper, and that's why I have an office now remotely, you're throwing me off 20 minutes. And she looked at me and she said, when you're making as much money as Eben Pagan, then I'll change his diaper, right? So just be careful, Sean, all right? So, if you end up doing everything, this is what your desk is going to look like. This is what your desk is going to look like. It's going to look like a bunch of sticky notes, a bunch of eaten up food, half-drank coffee, because you're grinding it out and you're trying to. And I told you my life story that I almost burnt myself out. Trying to sleep 4 hours a night, working on my internet marketing business, getting back up at 6:30, heading into my assistant controller position that I was working at here in Brampton. And I literally used to go into the washroom when I was falling asleep at my desk, and I used to take cold water. I'd fill it into my hands. I go, wake up, go back to my desk and work. Go back. That didn't work out after a while because my body eventually said, you can't keep doing this anymore. So very, very important that you understand and you start applying Pareto's rule. Everybody in the room said, yeah, I've heard of the rule, but only one person says that he's actively trying to engage it in his life and use it in his life. So Todd Herman, that many of you guys might have heard about, allowed me to use this. I reached out to him on Messenger and I said, hey Todd, can I mention this? And he said, sure. And his website is 90 Day Year. And basically he has what he calls the Entrepreneurial Scorecard. And he asks you to take this scorecard and list all the activities that you do that are $10, all the activities that you do that are $100, all the activities that you do that are $1,000 to your business, all of the activities that you do that are $10,000 in your business. And basically he's got it broken down to the $10 and the $100 activities. Are you working in your business? You do not want to be working in your business. You want to be working on your business. And working on your business is the $1,000 and the $10,000 activities. Okay? Who here is doing $10 activities in their business? Exactly, right? Even the guys in my office, Carol and David, they'll look at you and go, why are you doing that? Let me do that. Let me do that. Once again, that's that control freaking nature of me that, I can do it so much faster, so much quicker. I'm just going to do it, get out of the way. And they'll say, no, let's write an SOP and we'll just do it. Because why are you doing a $10 activity? Because that's not moving the needle. So the $10 activities are your basic admin tasks. And especially in North America, you shouldn't even be having employees doing $10 tasks. You should be having that outsourced to countries like the Philippines or India, where you can get people doing the basic admin tasks. Then there's the $100 tasks, which are still considered the work tasks. Okay, Todd calls it the work tasks. So anything that is costing you like $100, maybe it's a graphic designer, maybe it's a developer, you should not be doing that. You should be hiring somebody to do and you might be thinking, ooh, $100 an hour, that's about where I'm at. You're not at that, folks. You're CEOs. You're at the $5,000 level. You're at the $10,000 level. You got to be thinking through. You're the puppet master.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you got to be thinking strategically. All right. So once you've kind of moved out of working in your business, you start moving into management, which is the $1,000 an hour, $1,000 an hour type tasks. Okay, and that could be managing employees, delegating projects. Could be your project manager. That's working now on your business, not in your business. You guys understand that? You guys get that? Okay? But eventually, obviously when you're starting a business, that's brand spanking new, you start at $10 an hour, you're doing the $10 tasks, you evolve into the $100 tasks, you quickly get into the $1,000 because now you've hired team members to do everything for you. Your aim is to get into the last part, which is the $10,000 strategic thinking, where you're making big decisions that drive your business. And we're not even talking about 20-80 anymore, or 80-20. We're talking about like 1% that drives 99% of the results, that one big decision, right? So, I was doing that, but I also started looking at what other people, Todd Herman calls it the entrepreneurial scorecard. Perry Marshall calls it, he sticks with the 80-20 rule, but he calls, he breaks it down basically into 5 phases. Phase 1, delegating basic tasks. Phase 2, delegating basic decisions. Phase 3, delegating outcomes, which I guess you could call it in the $100 place. On Todd Herman's scorecard. And then phase 4, let the number do the managing for you, which would probably be the $1,000 phase, where people are analyzing data in your office. They're looking at what's working, what's not working, making decisions to the people doing the $100 tasks and the $10 tasks on where they need to be driving their workload and their results. And then phase 5 is you master executive decision making. That's what you need to be doing. I know that we all have dreams that of being a CEO of this. We've all had this dream. I had this dream when I was a kid. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to have 500 employees under me. Life is going to be great. I'm going to be the big kahuna and stuff like that. I'll tell you, once you have 7, 8 employees, you start saying to yourself, why do I have employees? I'm dealing with this. Sally's crying in the washroom because Betty said this to Sally, and Dave is, not that Dave. I'm just being generic here. Dave is standing by the water cooler all the time, and things like that, right? You start dealing with people issues, and before you need it, you need to get a human resources team, you need to get a controller, you need to get all of these things, and it's not as fun as you thought it would be. But that's where you got to completely evolve a lot faster, hire the right people, and be able to grow and scale your business. And that's what happens is that when we start our businesses, it does this, and then it does this. Then eventually this, because you're getting like, oh my God, I'm getting burnt out, I'm stuck in another job. So like I said, what is step 1? One of the things that I did, and many of you have been on my list for a while, I think this is the number 1 killer for all of us in this room. I literally believe it's email. And I used to be subscribed to all of these marketing lists and all of this stuff, and I hesitated to unsubscribe because I didn't want to miss out. I felt that if I unsubscribed from this marketer's list or that marketer, I was going to miss out on something, and then 6 months down the road, oh, you didn't know about that? And I'd be like, oh my God. I probably got off of about 90% of the lists I'm on. I have no idea what's going on in the JV world, what launch is going on, or until I maybe hear it from somebody. But my business has not skipped a beat. It has not skipped a beat. In fact, it's helped my business because now I'm focusing on what's driving my business rather than reading this huge email about why you need to promote this product or why you need to buy this $17 WSO offer or whatever that's going to revolutionize your business. I don't waste my time on doing that anymore. I look at my emails, I look at who it's from. We all do that. Who's it from first, right? You look at the name, and right away you assign an importance to it, right? Like many of you guys, when you open your email and you see Gaur Chaudhry, you put it into your important folder, you star it, you make sure you reply to give me good results with the Gmail and stuff like that. So, you do that with the important emails. And one of the mistakes that I was making when I was getting hundreds of emails a day was that I would take the important emails and I would tuck them away in an important folder and say, that's important, I'm going to read that later. And I'm going to read all the garbage and weed through it really quick. Did I ever go back to the emails I should have been? Did you guys do that? Oh man, I'm going to read, that's good. That's real good. I'm going to read that tonight. And then you're reading garbage from the other people because you need to skim it really fast, and you've spent 2 hours reading the stuff you shouldn't be reading, right? I don't do that anymore. I delete all the stuff based on who and the subject line, and the important stuff, I make sure I read it there and then. It's very hard to do, but I get value out of doing that. Step 2 is to delegate, like I said, the $10 tasks, the web design. Why are you guys not using Upwork? Why are you guys not? And I know you might sit there and you might think, oh man, I got to go to Upwork, post a job, do this, do that. Yeah, it takes time, but when you write those standard operating procedures on how to do that stuff you can get employees to do. Like for example, in the office, we needed to get a baby newsletter put together, and I was thinking, okay, well, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do this because that's not the efficient use of my time. So I delegated the task to David. David said, well, that's not an efficient use of my time either. Well, he didn't say that initially. He said, oh yeah, I know Adobe InDesign. I go, well, no, dude, that's not an efficient use of your time. Delegate it out. So he hired somebody in the Philippines to do it. Yeah, it cost about $100, but it was nicely designed and it looked great. Saved his time and it saved my time. Step 3, delegate management. So anything to do with statistics, strategy, insights, graphics, processes, predicting, that's all in the $1,000 management level. That's what you're going to delegate out to the people who are going to be filtering information out to you. And then you end up with step 4, which is the strategic management. This should be you, where you're basically driving the direction of your company, okay? And when you're doing that, pretty soon, gears are working properly because you're pushing all the right levers, you got all the right people in the right seats on the bus, and they're pushing your business now to the next level. And at the end of the day, this is what you really should be striving for. Your whole business should be automated in a perfect utopia. No employees, no outsourced workers. Anything that you can find a way to automate in your business is what you should be striving for. And anything that can't be automated, then you let a human do. Does that make sense? I mean, look what Elon's trying to do. Automated car, right? So I'm part of about 3 or 4 different masterminds, and one of them is a wealth mastermind. And he brought up something pretty interesting, this mastermind that I'm part of. Can Pareto's rule be applied to the rule itself? 80-20 reduces down. If you were to apply the 80-20 rule to the 80-20 rule, that means that 64% of your results are driven by 4% of inputs. Does that make sense? If you drive that down, 64 by 4 reduces down. You apply the 80-20 rule to that, that really means that 51% of your business results are driven by about 1% of your inputs. Isn't that pretty incredible? So the big question is, what is that 1%? And that's what all of us should be striving for. So is it really possible to identify the 1% that drives over 50% of results? And does that even exist in nature? That 1% drives a certain industry, a certain market, or does it apply to something, right? Interestingly enough, 32 million people control 41% of the world's wealth. 32 million represents 0.7% of the world. Controls almost 41% of the world's wealth. So it exists in terms of inequalities in wealth in the world. And we see that. We're living in North America, first world country versus, third world country. And it was embarrassing because I was at Best Buy about a year ago because I was looking for a flat screen TV for my bedroom. So I took 2 of my buddies with me, right? And we're all standing there and we're looking at the flat screen on the wall. And I'm thinking, you know what, my bedroom's it's pretty large, it's pretty deep. If I get the 45 inch, it might be a little bit too small. I might need to go up to the 48 inch because that might be a little bit better, but is it gonna fit in the bedroom beside the closet door and the bathroom door? And they're all like, yeah, I don't know, man. And they're standing there with their fingers like that and stuff like that. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the Best Buy rep leaning on one of the TVs, and he's just smiling, right? And he goes, can I help you with anything? And I go, no, we're just trying to figure out what's gonna be best for my bedroom. And he looks at me, he goes, great to have first world problems, eh? Seriously, but that hit me. And that one saying had a profound effect on me. Because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I'm arguing over inches on a TV. And there's people elsewhere in the world, and you can clearly see that 68.7% of the people in the world make less than $10,000 in a year. That made me feel really grateful and have a lot of gratitude. But that is the reality of inequality. It does exist in the world. Did you guys know that 1% of Hollywood movies drive 80% of all the revenues? Pretty amazing, eh? Of all the movies that come out, 1% of them drive 80% of the results. So as long as Star Wars trilogies are around, they're going to dominate the box office. You look at money. 80% of the money that you spend goes on useless things that you don't even use. Can you believe that? 80% of the money you spend actually goes on useless things. And I'll be completely transparent and honest with you. When I was banking it hard, like 10, 12 years ago, I have to say that I was financially immature. Not to the extent where I was buying Lamborghinis and all that stuff, because I told you my wife would make fun of me and stuff like that. But I would make really immature financial decisions as far as what we would buy for our house. Would I make those same decisions now? Absolutely not. I'll give you an example. I had a contractor come in and build my basement. And I looked at the washroom, and I didn't like the size of the washroom. He goes, I can only move it out 2 more inches because you're going to hit this particular pillar. And I looked at the 2 inches and I said, move it. And he dropped his jaw and he goes, because he had already built it. He goes, you want me to move it 2 inches? And I said, well, yeah. He goes, well, it's going to cost you, right? I go, well, how much is it going to cost me? He goes, $500. I go, do it. Just do it. Do you think when I'm using that washroom, which I use once a year, swear to God, it's in the basement, that 2 inches really makes a difference anymore? No, to me, that was financial immaturity. And if you look at what you spend your money on, I'm pretty sure you guys will right out of the gate say, why did I spend money on that? I don't even use it. Why do I spend money on this? Embarrassingly enough, I'll say it again, financial immaturity. I had a full basement theater put in with the projector, with the drop down and everything. About 8 years ago, I've probably watched in those 8 years 3 or 4 movies on that screen. Sean, my son, loves it because he plays video games on it every day. Now I'm getting use out of it. But would I make that same decision today? No, it's financial immaturity. So somebody asked Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett drives, for the longest time, he drove a beat-up car. He lives in the same house. And I think somebody said to Warren, I go, why don't you're worth $60 billion. Why don't you buy a brand new car and spoil yourself? And I don't know the exact verbiage he used. He goes, if you look at the interest rates and the leasing arrangements, that $400 a month, if I took that and put that in a great investment and it compounded over 16 years or 32 years and at this rate of return, that would come out to about $4.6 million. Why would I spend $4.6 million on a brand new car? A little bit extreme, I agree. But you guys get the point. In terms of, he's always thinking in terms of the value of money now into the future, right? Is this making sense, folks? Is this helpful? Okay. Relationships. This is a great one, and Ed brought it up. Who do you spend your time with the most? Think of the friends you do not enjoy being around that you spend 80% of the time with. Talking about your friends and your relatives, and Ed talked about this. I know it's difficult, but if you're not hanging around with people that nurture you or your brain in terms of personally and business-wise, then why are you hanging around them? Okay, it's very different. I got great friends, but in terms of, I think differently than a lot of my single friends. You know, as a parent, you think differently, right? And you just naturally you just don't click anymore. I remember I was driving with one of my friends, and I have 4 kids, and he didn't have any kids. And I was sitting there, and I don't know what was going through my mind, and I looked at him, I go, hey, dude, do you ever think about your own immortality? Because you do as a parent, right? Because your kids, your prodigy, if you're gone before they grow up, or what you don't know about life. Because one of the things I didn't tell you about my story was, my mother actually unexpectedly passed away when I was only 15. When I was in grade 9, just all of a sudden gone. And one day I was coming back from my paper route, and she had died of a heart attack. Just no warning, no nothing, no goodbyes, gone. So as a father myself, I think about my own immortality. So I looked at him and I said, dude, do you think about your own immortality? He's sitting there and he goes, hell no. And I realized we think very differently. And I find I get along way better now with people who have kids. It just naturally happens, all right? Look at who you're hanging out with. Look at if you have a business partner you're with, like Ed said, and you guys aren't getting along, you need to say, dude, we need to sit down and we need to talk. And that's happened with me. I've gone into partnerships, things I realize are not going as well as they are, and I go, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun when you have to have that kind of tension. Look at the food you're eating, what you're entering into your body. Write down what you eat 20% of the time that gives you 80% of the value and keeps you healthy and energetic. My wife is always forcing me to eat vegetables and salads and stuff like that. At the end of the day, that's what's giving me the energy. And healthy carbs, that's what's giving me the energy. So, I try to look at, how do you find this elusive 1% that drives like 50% of your business? And if you look at every different part of your business, I'm pretty sure you can find it. And I know, Kevin, you're a statistical genius. If you really dig into those numbers, you could probably find the 1% that drives 50% of a business. So I try to look at, and I apply this to our businesses. So we looked at one of our Google AdWords accounts, and we found 2 campaigns out of about 20 drive 13 million of the $15 million ad spend in this account. So why would we care about the other ad groups and not just focus on these ones? So then we took it one step further, that if 2 of these campaigns are responsible for 85% of the results, well, let's look at the top campaign and find out the top 3 ad groups that are driving $11 million, or the majority of the results of that $11 million in cost. And we're drilling down to the ads now that were responsible for the bulk of the money. And really trying to drill down on the one ad out of the hundreds and hundreds of ads that was the real driver for all of the revenue in the business. And when you can identify these little elements or these gems in any sort of traffic source or any facet of your business, and then you just focus on that, that can have an exponential effect in your business. Does that make sense? So my challenge to all of you is to dig deeper into your businesses and in your lives to apply the 80-20 rule for not only a better business, for a better quality of life. Because, when you start getting into your 30s, you start getting into your 40s, and you start getting into your 50s, it's all about leverage. It is absolutely about leverage, because you don't want to hustle and grind, get into your 50s and 60s, and all the things that you promised yourself that you were going to do, you can't do them because you've sacrificed your health or whatever it may be. Do it now. Find out the levers in your business now and take your business to the next level. Does that make sense? Awesome. Did anybody have any questions about that? Sure, you want to come up, buddy?
You were mentioning $10 tasks, $100 tasks, $10,000 tasks, things like that. Something that's $10 tasks, if done incorrectly, can cost the business $10,000 or something like that. So one viewpoint that I personally have, and I would like to just bounce it off you, is that you need to, if that risk of costing the business tens of thousands of dollars is still there, then that's still a $10,000 task until you make it it's still a $10,000 task until you make it a $10 task. And that's step one, and then you have someone do that $10 task.
I 100% agree with you. $10 tasks are basic admin tasks. So give me an example, Kevin, of a $10 task that could potentially cost your company tens of thousands of dollars.
You mentioned the other day that you were upset at one of your programmers because they didn't make it a mobile optimized site.
Yes. So
that should have been driven home to that programmer like long before and all that kind of stuff. And then it becomes a $10 task.
And what I learned from that is I should have paid somebody else $10 an hour for quality assurance. Does that make sense? I agree with you. If there's a risk that it's going to cost you thousands of dollars, then it's not quite a $10 task unless you got that $10 task that backs up that $10 task. So good point, Kevin. Accounting. Accounting or invoicing, yes. Victoria, that's a good point. That could be potentially a big issue, but what's to stop you from making that error?
No, I just don't send it. I just
Yeah.
avoid sending the invoice.
Yeah.
Whereas if I pay someone to do it, they do it. So that was a $10 that could have been $10,000.
Yeah, but in some cases, have you ever made a mistake in a $10 task too?
Oh, no, a lot.
Yeah, so the risk is still there.
No, I was saying, you asked for an example of what is a $10 task that could become a $10,000.
Yeah.
And for me, I put off invoicing. It's like I hate money. I don't know what the problem is. I put that off.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? All right. Okay. Yep. Do you want to come up?
What about finding what are the features or characteristics of things that are 20 of that 100%? Talking about the 80-20 rule.
Yep.
So when you find out what are those features that make those things part of a 20%,
Yep.
replicate that so you have a lot of 20% things.
Yep.
So I think that's a
So-
good strategy.
So that's a good point, Magdiel. The other point is that I'm not saying 80% of what else you're doing is complete waste. Why don't you guys take a look at that 80% and see how you can bring that back into the 20% realm too? Does that make sense too? That's a good point. Excellent.